All right, time is set. We got 15 minutes. It's story time. You guys have asked me a couple of times now, how did I start off in the lawn business? My mic is held on by one of them bulldog clips or whatever they're called. I lost a clip that goes with this, damn it. You guys have asked me what equipment and stuff I used in the past, and you even went so far to ask me how I even got started in the lawn business. So I guess what we'll do is I'm eating more cat with lo mein, so I'm using a fork, lo mein with bourbon chicken. This is from Mr. SZE Chinese food in Folkville. It's really good. How did I get started? I used to skateboard back in the 80s when I was born in 1970, the end of 70. So when we moved to South Florida, we met up a kid named Terrence Collins, me and my older brother. Terrence Collins was a couple years older than my brother. They lived in our neighborhood. And Terrence was into skateboarding. Me and my brother got skateboards. And then, one thing leads to another. You want to have better trucks. You want to have a better board. You want to have better bearings and better wheels. And my mom and dad, they made money. We didn't live poor by any means. We were middle class, on the higher side of middle class. My dad worked his ass off. But he pretty much let it be known, if it wasn't Christmas or birthday, if you wanted something, you had to go out and get it. I know that's talking dirty with today's children. But you had to go out and get it. You had to earn it. And so I used to spend, I was about 11, 12 years old, and my father he'd let me cut the grass. But he was really picky about it. So I'd spend about 11 hours, when I was 11 years old, I'd spend about 6 hours every week mowing my lawn. And what I used was a 2-cycle lawn boy. That's what my dad had, 2-cycle lawn boy. And then he had a corded plug-in little string trimmer, probably a CRAFTSMAN or something off the shelf at Sears, with like a 100-foot bright orange extension cord. And then we had an edger, and it was one of those old-fashioned edgers, the type that you have the little handle you put down and it brings the blade down, and it's got the 2 wheels in the back and 1 wheel in the front, like a 3-horsepower motor. And you'd push that edger along, and you can actually angle the blade by turning a thing left and right. You guys know what I'm talking about. So that was my equipment. Then I had a broom, a shovel, garbage bags, whatever. And so I would spend like 6 hours mowing my lawn for my dad. That's where I learned how to edge around palm trees and do all that. Well, the neighbor lady Dale across the street, who was probably in her 30s, maybe 20s, I'm 11, 12 years old. She had 2 boys. I used to babysit her 2 boys. I can't remember their name right now for the life of me, but they really looked up to me back then. And so she asked me, hey, you do a great job. You want to cut my yard? Because her husband worked a lot. He was a banker. I would have done anything for Dale. I tell you what, that was one beautiful woman, and I was, preteen. I'd do anything for that lady. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll cut your grass. And so she says, okay. So back in like the 90s or the early 80s, I'm cutting her grass, which leads to the neighbor's grass, which leads to a yard around the corner, which leads to yards in my neighborhood. And I'm 12, 13 years old now, approaching 14 years old. And I'm using my dad's equipment. Lawn boy, corded weed eater, push edger, and a broom. And I'm making like $15, $12, $10, whatever the people wanted to pay me. That was about it. And then I'd go to my uncle's house. Actually, my mother's uncle's house. I'd do his yard. And to get there, my mom would load me up in either the Dodge Aspen that we had with an 8-track player, Or my dad's Mercedes. My dad always wanted a Mercedes, 300 turbo diesel. That's the Mercedes he consistently would buy every 3 years to get a brand new one. 300D, 300 turbo diesel. Those are the ones that he wanted. He loved them things. So we would load up the Mercedes or load up the Dodge. And my mom would take me to my uncle's house and would cut yards. I'd cut the yard and she'd visit with her aunt and uncle while I'm out there working. And that's what got me started making money and learning the ins and outs of making money, and then turning around and using that money to buy things I wanted. Bicycles, skateboards, cartoons, comics, bubblegum. And I learned at a very early age, thanks to my mom and dad helping me out with getting me to places, and by not just throwing me $20 to shut me up, I learned very early on that if you want something, you gotta work for it. And so when I turned 16 years old, my dad had a rule: no car until you're 18. My brother had to wait till he was 18. So my brother turns 18 and he gets a Volkswagen Golf. I turned 16 and I got a Toyota pickup truck that I paid for. There was $2,200 in the bank. That was my down payment. And then I had to make the payments, and it was $139 a month for like 48 months or something like that. I don't remember. I know it was like $130 a month. I don't remember the term afterwards. But it was in my name with my dad as a co-signer or whatever. I had to make the payment. I remember you got a little book and you peel out the little coupon book and put a money order or a check or whatever in it, or you can go right to the local place and pay it. It had the 22R block. It was a 4-speed stick shift. It was red. I put chrome rims on it. It was a 2-door regular cab, gray interior, and I put a big gray camper top on the back. And I used to go to high school and I'd have my lawnmower. At this point now, I bought an Echo weed eater. I bought an Echo edger and some type of a blower. I don't remember. I'd have all my rakes in there. I'd go to school. I'd get out of school. I'd drive to a customer's house. I'd undress out of my school clothes and I'd mow lawns. And that's what I did for a long time. Then I went to 18-wheeler truck driver school. I got my CDL and nobody would touch me because I was 18 or 19 years old. I delivered pizzas on the side, but I always cut grass. But what really cut my teeth in like the lawns and what got me to the way I am today with work is a guy named Wilkie Wilkinson Wright. Wilkie and Brian Washburn. Brian Washburn and Todd owned a business called Cutters Enterprises. This is sometime in the 90s. They hired me, as pretty much general worker, and I quickly became one of their lead people as they grew too big. I became one of their leads. Brian was a weed eating master. He weeded like I weed eat now. He weeded back then like that now. And nobody's ever seen such a thing. Guy was amazing. Sorry, I'm in a rush. I got 6 minutes to go and I want to share a dating story. So Brian was really, really good. And I learned a little bit from Brian, but then they hired Wilkie. Wilkie was probably about 5 years younger than me. In fact, he was still in high school. So when school would start, we would go and pick him up after school so he can then work. And then he'd work with us until the sun went down. And then it got to the point where me and Wilkie went out alone with all the lawn equipment for cutters. And I would do most of the mowing, and Wilkie was a master with the weed eater. He made Brian look, slow. And I remember one day Wilkie was in the backyard doing something, and I was like, what is that kid doing? We got to go. And I remember Brian looked at me and he said, whatever that kid's doing, it needs to be done. And I remember that, man. And that stuck with me my entire life, that what a level of respect this kid from high school had from a business owner. And like, there was no, yeah, I know he's back there effing off. No, it was like, whatever he's doing, it needs to be done. And from that moment on, I looked at Wilkie in a different way. I really started to admire him and look up to him. Even though I was probably 5 or 6 years his senior, I really started to admire him. Cutters dissolved because they had management problems between the two partners. Not to be discussed here. And so me and Wilkie started our own deal. We went in together and we grew our business, Trimmers Enterprises. And that was the name that I started because it was Cutters and they dissolved. So I started Trimmers. And we went, and me and Wilkie became a partnership, a legal partnership. And Trimmers Enterprises was legal down in Florida. And I think he had just graduated high school at this point. And he used to do most of the weed eating, and I would do most of the mowing. And he taught me how to weed eat, not physically showing me, but me watching him. And I caught on, and then I molded it to my own way. Me and Wilkie ended up parting ways, not as enemies. He wanted to take the business solely residential, and I wanted to take the business solely business. All commercial accounts. And so we split the business, we split the equipment. I kept the name Trimmers, and he started the business name Redline, like Redline Enterprises or something like that. And he had a red pickup truck, red Ford F-150, old one. He was a great guy, man. I really looked up to that guy. And from there, I grew my business with a lot of commercial accounts. I used to do Toyota of Hollywood. So if you're down in the Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood area, I used to do Toyota of Hollywood, County Line Lexus. I used to do the Miami subs on Pines Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard. I used to do a lot of shopping centers, a lot of banks. I used to do all those. And what I used to do is, I think at the time, Toyota of Hollywood was like $660 a cut, something like that. I hired my buddy Dave. Dave would go with his equipment, his gas, his guy. It would take him about 3 or 4 hours to do, and he charged me like $300 a cut. So I used to make $300 for nothing. No gas or anything. I would just make sure everything's done right, turn in the invoice, collect the check, pay him his cut. He was happy because he didn't have to deal with anybody. And $300 for a half a day of work was pretty good money back in the mid-90s. I was happy because I didn't have to get out of bed, and I'd make about $300. And it'd be all profit. So that worked out pretty cool. That's how I started my business. That's how I got good at weed eating. Wilkie really made me good. Wilkie Wright. Wilkie taught me about job integrity, getting the respect of your boss, and making it so if you're not in the boss's eyesight, the boss is saying, you know, whatever Dan's doing, I'm sure it has to be done. He ain't out there just effing off. And that stuck with me my whole life, back from me being a late teenager to the early 20s to now, 47 years of age. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget Brian Washburn. If you ever come across this video, Brian, I'll never forget you saying that about a kid 5 years younger than me and you, and how that impacted my life, and that kid, how that kid molded me with how he worked to how I work today. So a lot of it goes to him. So, all right, it's been 14 minutes. That's how I got started. That was the equipment. My equipment from Trimmers as I went on my own: Skag 36-inch walk behind, mostly Echo weed eaters and stick edgers, because that's what was available to us. That's what the shops had by us, and probably Echo backpack blower. I'm pretty sure. Lesco pump sprayers, because there was a Lesco by us. Lesco 4-gallon pump sprayers. Let me see what else. I think that's really about it. We used to use the hula hoe a lot, and I got all types of stories I could tell you about what we used to do. I'm at my neighborhood, by the way. I'm eating lunch. I let my dogs out. I have all types of stories I can share with you. Okay, real quick. Spend 15 minutes. Real quick. Hang on. A dating story. I went out with a girl not too long ago, and her pictures, gorgeous hair, gorgeous eyes, gorgeous makeup, everything was really spot on. I mean, she was really pretty. I was like, I remember I even said to her, how can I justify even responding to you? You're so beautiful, something like that. You know, it's like, this has got to be a joke. You must be a prostitute or something, trying to light me up for cash or something, right? Nope. Turns out she was a real person. We made a date. We got together. So we showed up, and obviously she was in between weaves or extensions because she didn't have the hair that was in the pictures, and she must have had a rough day at work because she didn't have the makeup like was in the pictures. Did she catfish me? Maybe. I might have been catfished. But she was still the pretty smile, the pretty eyes, and that really meant a lot to me. So we were eating dinner. She orders like shrimp kebab or something like that, eats one of the shrimp and says she's going to take it home. I'm like, hold up now. I paid for this for our meal for a date. I didn't pay for this to take home to like family or something. But whatever, you know, that's just my first thing. It's like, man, I think I just got catfished and snookered. I think I just bought her kid a meal or something. Because she did have one son. No big deal. So I'm like, hey, you want to go? Or you guys. I was like, hey, you want to go to a park or something? She was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, all right. So we get in my truck. We drive around the corner. We're close to her house. I follow her to her house. She gets in my truck. And then we go to the park. She was in like a townhouse type deal. She drops off her car, gets in my truck. We go to the park. I'm trying to be quick here because of time. So we get out, and she wasn't big, but she wasn't small. We get out of my truck, and I go, oh, I better bring a towel to wipe the bench because it had rained earlier. And so I go to grab a towel. I come around, and I join her on the passenger side. She takes my hand. We start walking. She goes, oh, yes, I have a tight ass. And I was like, what? Like, what did this chick just say to me? And I was like, what did you say? And I was laughing because I didn't understand what she said. And she goes, I have a tight ass. I'm like, you have a tight ass? And I'm like, and I look and I'm thinking to myself, no, I think you got some Jello in there. You know, I'm just like, you know, whatever. But I was just like, oh, okay. You know, first date. What do you say? You know, I'm just like, okay. And she goes, I mean a tight ass, if you know what I mean. And I was like, ugh. Record scratch, that eek sound. I was like, oh, she means. I was like, I've known you for an hour and you're telling me that you. Okay. I was like, maybe that's the way they date nowadays. I don't know. I've been married for the past, 9 or 10 years with the same woman, whatever, or 8 years to the same woman, and a couple years has gone by, and I've dated, but thinking, okay, maybe that's just a new thing, So I just blew it off. If you know me, you know I just laugh it off. I didn't hear nothing. Whatever, that's fine. We go, we walk. I'm holding her hand. We walk over, and I put the towel down. I wipe the bench, and I put the towel down for her to sit on, and she sits down. And when she sat down, the wind blew, and I was like, "Oh, you smell really pretty." And I was like, I just got my truck. I'm like, you're going to make the truck smell really nice. And she looks right at me and she goes, I like to smell nice. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, everywhere. I was like, tight ass. You want to smell nice everywhere. You ate one freaking shrimp out of the whole $15 kebab I bought you. You're in between extensions and hair weaves. This ain't going to work. So I was like, well, it's getting kind of late, and I ended the date. I was like, we got to go. I gotta go. She's like, well, we just got here. I'm like, I know, but looks like it's going to rain. So we got back in the truck, and I think she knew at that point I was done. We got back to her house. I run around real quick, opened the door for her. I gave her a hug. I got back in my truck. Block, swipe left, delete. on the save, you know, the email, whatever, or text messages, delete, went to contact, block, whatever, never heard from her again. I was like, really, seriously? So that's a little dating horror story for me. I mean, really? A tight ass? I have a tight ass. I'll never forget that. Never. But anyways, thanks for hanging out with me for my lunch. It's been 20 minutes. I'm going to eat and drive now and break all types of laws, but I got to go. Because I want to make sure my boss is always saying whatever Dan's doing, it's got to be done. So I want to stay on it. All right. I appreciate you guys, and I will catch you on the next one. Send more ideas. Let me know what you guys want to know, and we'll do another mukbang next week or something. All right. Peace.